Western Civilization. How much do you know? My name is Russell Miles, and this is the 52nd episode of our Western Civilization series. In this episode, we'll continue to examine how ethnohistory gives voice to neglected minorities, using pre-Columbian population estimates as our case study. Francisco de Alega was a Spanish soldier who witnessed the conquest firsthand. Decades later, he wrote his account, The Brief Account of the Conquest of New Spain. What makes Allega's testimony so valuable is his challenge to the official narrative. He famously said of Cortes, "He may say what he wishes, but I tell the truth before God." Now, here's where it gets interesting. When Allega's account was finally published in 1938, translators faced a critical question. Did the original Spanish refer to 60,000 houses or 60,000 householders? That single word makes an enormous difference. Enter Franciscan friar Juan Don Tomaria. Writing in the early 1600s, he took Allega's figures and assumed how many people lived in each house, and by his calculations, Tenochtitlan was roughly 700,000 inhabitants. In 1941, archaeologist G.C. Valiant offered a figure of 300,000 for Tenochtitlan. Apologist Juan Sotel used Allega and Torquemada's information to calculate Tenochtitlan's population at 560,000 to 700,000. By 1979, archaeologists Sanders, Parson and Santos offered a lower estimate, 200,000 to 300,000. To put this in perspective, a city of 200 to 300,000 would have rivaled Paris, Europe's largest city at the time. The Spanish didn't return alone to Tenochtitlan. Cortes allied with the Talacatas and other Aztec enemies, assembling 150,000 indigenous warriors plus 1,000 Spanish troops. Their strategy was ruthless. They blockaded the city by the lake, positioned cannons on boats, and critically seized Tenochtitlan's freshwater supply. The siege lasted 4 months. Then came the final assault. 5 days of intense fighting. Tenochtitlan fell. What's critical here is understanding why. Cortes' own letters describe breaching the defence through fierce combat, burning buildings and systematically capturing or killing inhabitants. But there's another factor. Smallpox had been ravaging the city. Famine was setting in. The defenders were overwhelmed. Now here's a fundamental problem. Our sources on Aztecs are sparse. Most come from a single, remarkable source. Franciscan friar Bernardo de Charigans spent decades in New Spain collecting oral history and artworks from indigenous peoples. He compiled everything into what was known as the Florentine Codex, or in Spanish, the Historia General de la Cosa de Nueva España, the Spanish history of things of New Spain. It's massive, 2,500 pages across 12 books, written partly in Náhuatl, the Aztec language, and illustrated by indigenous artists themselves. Within these pages are accounts of economic life, social structure, Aztec history and mythology. It is an invaluable window into Aztec civilization. But remember, it was mediated through a Spanish friar's perspective. The Codex Mendoza, created in 1541, provides another window. Its Aztec pictograms depict history and daily life, including evidence of sophisticated financial systems. The Aztecs collected taxes systematically, market levies, land taxes, payments on crown lands. Citizens paid in goods, cocoa beans, foodstuff, cotton cloth, and through labour and military service. This sounds reliable, but there's a methodological problem. This information was compiled by Spanish authorities, not the Aztecs themselves. Few original Aztec artifacts, stone carvings or artworks survive to independently verify these claims. Friar Torbera de Valiente was one of a group of Franciscan friars who journeyed to New Spain in 1523. He travelled widely, studied the language and indigenous history and beliefs, and was to remain for the rest of his life, advocating for decent treatment of indigenous people. He was able to describe the 1576 endemic. The place we know as New Spain was left almost empty. Pierre Biard, a Jesuit missionary, noted, "They, the Indians, are astonished, and have often complained that since the French mingle and carry on trade with them, they are dying fast, and the population is thinning out." Kilpatrick Sale, in The Conquest of Paradise, 1990, mentions that on the 12th of October, 1492, a group of Taino gathered on what is now called San Salvador Island to welcome Columbus's sailors. The number of Taino living in San Salvador was estimated to be 60,000. Within 56 years, a single lifetime, the Taino population fell to fewer than 500. This is believed to be the first of three pandemics, starting with smallpox, measles, and perhaps salmonella, along with influenza, which had swept through. Such was the resultant famine, enslavement, and social collapse reduced the population to a fraction of what it had been. So by the late 1600s, with some calculations suggesting that 9 out of 10 people had been erased from the planet. Now let's step back and look at the bigger historical picture. Spanish priest Bartholomew de las Casas, writing in 1560, made a staggering claim. 40 million Indians had died between 1492 and 1560. That's a death toll, not a population estimate, but it hints at the scale we are discussing. In 1920s, three scholars with deep expertise in Native American archaeology and history made their own calculations. Working largely intuitively, they estimated the pre-Columbian New World population at between 37 and 50 million people. Enormous. Later scholars became more conservative. They revised these figures downward significantly. New estimates are 8.4 million, 13.3 million, 15.6 million. A dramatic swing in just a few decades. Our final podcast about ethnohistory will be on the effect of Western culture and assessment of population sizes. In the meantime, the origins of the Aztec language emerged from the north of the Valley of Mexico or within the south of the valley. If you like this channel, please subscribe and tick like. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I can be contacted at email russmills@iprimus.com.au. Thanks for listening.